Good afternoon. Glad to have everyone back. We are today, September the 3rd, 2020, and this is a second video of relating our history as Latino Commission and really the base philosophy for the reason why or the methodology behind the way that we do things. My name is Deborah Camarillo. I'm Executive Director, and I'm the proud daughter of Esteban Leos Camarillo and Anita Figueroa. And my father comes by way of Zacatecas, Mexico, up to Texas, right down there in the Valle, in a place called Kingsville, Texas. And my mother, her family, by way of Puerto Rico to the Hawaiian Islands, they landed on the big island of Hawaii. And she was raised up by the volcano in a place called Keau, which is now, it was Ola, and now it's called Keau. So with that, greetings. We're very grateful for another day of breath and life that the Creator has granted us, and we're going to pick up where we left off. And so as a refresher, I just really quick want to go over what we talked about last week. So we did talk about the history of Latino Commission and how we came together. And we're actually in the process of creating a timeline. And I want to thank you for those that contributed to that timeline. And so it's in progress. And so once we get all of those significant dates and events, we'll be putting that out. We went over the model of Latino Commission, which is pride and strength comes from knowing who you are. We touched over the core values of Latino Commission, which was compassion, dignity, family, integrity, and teamwork. So we went through that. And then our mission statement, which was restoring all people holistically in an environment of love and understanding that represents our culture, improving quality of life. So that's what we covered last week. We also went into the maize-based philosophy, which is a phrase coined by Dr. Roberto St. Lee. And actually, it was interesting because I didn't even realize last week when I was speaking that we actually have a picture of his book that he wrote, and it's called Our Sacred Maize is Our Mother, and actually that is a book from Dr. Seatley. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and show that this is actually the cover of his book, and he actually gave me a poster of it, and so very grateful to Dr. Seatley. So in that, we talked about the maize itself, right? And so the maize or corn, how we look at it or know it today. And we, from our ancestors looked at corn and equated it with life, right? Because it was a sustenance that helped them to survive for those centuries. And also it is the only invented food. It was domesticated food. And so we showed pictures last week of what that tosint is the word where that comes from. And I also brought, and I want to come if you can do a close up here. So I brought with me today so we can envision what that corn used to look like more than what we have today. And so I want you to notice something. So within this, and it's very interesting, about maize and corn. So this particular one, I want you to notice all of the colors. And so they say within the colors of the maize are represented all the people of the earth and within ourselves. And so some people don't even understand that we have every shade coming from Mexico, Central America, and these Americas. And we have really dark-skinned Mexican, and if you remember on the colossal heads, yeah, you could come up. Those big, they call them the colossal heads, but they're these big artifacts that are out of stone, the Olmecs, and they're like about 9 feet tall. And if you look at the features there, we would associate them with what we would say are African features, right? But the interesting thing is that there's no trace of those Olmecs to Africa. So we know that within our own history, we have very, very dark people. And so within the corn, it's shown there, and then even all the way to light. We have pictures, that they discovered on some of those archaeological digs of the Aztecs, the Nahuatls. They're very, very dark, Mayan, very dark, and even to today. So we see that running, and this all predates thousands of years before the African slave trade or before we had those, that conocimiento, right? That introduction to the Americas. So I just wanted to bring that. The other part, within the corn, right? So the teachings, and we talked about that. We talked a little bit, and I mentioned about for the young girls coming into the Shilones. Those are young girls coming to rite ceremonies called the soft corn ceremonies, right? And so we talked about how the corn itself has so many teachings. And so one associated with the Shilones, sorry about that, is that as soon as the husk, we start to see the hairs coming out of the husk, that's associated with the development of the body. And so they're coming into that puberty, and that is the time that we celebrate those rite of passages ceremonies. And so for young women, they call it the tender corn ceremonies. And in those Shilones, you'll see that a lot of representation of the corn, because that's what it signifies, and the tenderness of it. So young women back in the day were being introduced to their roles and responsibilities that they would carry out. And if a young woman didn't learn, because remember, the women were the center of the hearth or the center of the home, and so understanding that they had to develop these skills of communication and cooperation, because they were going to lead a household in that way. So relationships were really important. Different from young men. So young men would be taken out for their ceremonies, because now they were going to go into a role of protection, and protection, and their skills, right? Their skills of hunting and creating, building, and things like that. So these are teachings that come way back and are still intact within our communities. And so, like we mentioned last week, or I mentioned last week, even though those that invaded into these Americas tried to just destroy all of our knowledge, they weren't able to do that. And so I just wanted to mention that. The other thing is that's interesting about the corn, it's the lessons of how we're all created and related. So the husk of the corn is the relationship to Mother Earth. All of the kernels, right, are of the people, all the different people, and we're all interrelated, next to each other. And then when you see the whole husk, it points up, because it points to the Creator and the importance of all that coming together and the universe. Now, the protection of the husk to the corn is about that environment and those cultural teachings and having that intact. So once those are intact, it actually protects the corn. It protects the people which are connected to, and we talked about that, Unaku, to the great Creator. So the lessons that come from our ancestors, those sacred teachings. Now, I was asked too, well, where's the PowerPoint, and, how can we have all these in writing? And my answer is no, because this is an oral tradition that comes from our ancestors. So when we talk about these cultural teachings, it's something that is related orally. So I encourage you to take notes so that you can capture that, but we're not putting it in a written material. This is information that gets related. When you sit with your elders or you sit with family, these are the stories that are told. And so I'm sharing these with you that come from many, many thousands of years, what's been related to us and what we know at this point. And so this is for you. And so the way that you carry this forward in a responsible way, is within your hands. And so that's why we don't write down those things. Now, there will be things in PowerPoints, when we get into the program, just like you see our mission statement, it's down there documented. Our core values are down there documented. Our motto is down there documented as an organization, but that isn't the ancestral knowledge and the ancestral teaching. So I just wanted to make that point. So that's why I encourage you, take notes, right? Take notes. And even with your families, right? When you get together, really, really value those stories that you were told. Coming back now to the maize-based philosophy, and we went through this last time. And so we talked about el laquech. And so just highlighting el laquech is the reciprocal relationship between all living things, life, the earth, and the universe, right? And so we said en laquech, tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. When I heal, you heal, right? And so talking about that relationship, that reciprocal relationship that we have with our fellow human beings. And we have that, the golden rule, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. And that is rippled across the world, right? All of the, societies and of tribes and of different cultural backgrounds, they have a golden rule for them. One of the things I want to point out, though, that in laquech, it goes beyond the human to human contact, and it's in relationship to our world, to our universe, to everything that has life, and to everything that has breath. So all living things. So that means our relationship with the plant teachers, with our four-legged, the creepy crawler, all of the animal world kingdom, our air, the mountains. And so our relationship within this dimension, right, which we call our universe that contains Mother Earth, right? So looking at that. So that is really the heart of el laquech. And then we went to Panchebe. And so it's the pursuit of truth, right? And even the pursuit of truth within the roots. And so understanding that it is a critical thinking that we have, and not to just accept because we're complacent, because we don't research or we don't discover for ourselves what is being said, right? But really understanding. So if you believe something, really understand why you believe it. I'm looking for that. And also looking, how do we look towards justice? How do we seek justice, right? And peace. So that was very important, to our ancestors, to be able to live in harmony, to live in a way that where the reflection of the truth can be seen in everything, right? And so just not accepting something just because someone said it. And I encourage you, just because I'm sharing this with you, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. And till you are satisfied with what it is that you have learned and what you believe. So really looking into Panchebe. And then the last one that comprises the elements of the maize-based philosophy, which is Hanukkah. And so the Mayans looked at it more in the sense that we would say associated to God, but they looked at it as the giver of life, or that great architect that designed this. And so I wanted to share that in the Huehue Tratoli, and the Huehue Tratoli was a book or a set of instructions that they would call la educación, right? What were the societal roles and responsibilities? So it was the book that the Aztecs lived by, and the people of that time. And it was Mayan influence also. Well, in the book of those set of things to live by, if I could say it in that way, when they referred to the Hunabku, which is a Mayan word, right? There was another word that represented that idea in Nahuatl, which was Ipanemuani, Ipanemuani. And that is the giver of life is the creator of the universe. So you still see that same concept, right? Of this architect, of this designer, something that is greater than ourselves, that gave this universe and this dimension life and breath. And so that energy, which they called Ipanemuani, or the Mayan word Hunabku, carries that context with it. And so for us, you know, in our contemporary way of looking at it, we might call God. And so it's that. But it's a concept that really envelops all that there is, seen and unseen, and the balance of light and darkness, of male and female, and everything in between. So it carries all of that duality also. And that is Unaku. Now, I shared that because we're talking about the base philosophies for Latino Commission. And so when we come to relaying it, to how is it that we implement that in the work that we do, right? You know, and that's what I want to talk about today. We go back to the enlaquech, right? So coming back to the part of that mirroring of one to another, we know that as addicts come in, they're very disconnected from their sacred self. And so as the counselors, as the members of the staff here in Latino Commission, the reflection of enlaquech is what you and I represent. And so the addict coming in that's so disconnected from their sacred self, all of a sudden comes into the presence of a former addict that looks nothing like who they are, right? Because we've been on the path maybe a little bit longer, and we've been able to heal some of those areas that they haven't gotten to yet. And so they look at us, and the reflection back of the enlaquech is, wow, healing is really possible for me as an addict. The other part is to see that there's a difference in life. So the way that I live my life is not the way that I started when I came in, gosh, going about 30 years now as a heroin addict. My life is so different now, right? And as those coming into recovery, they're able to see us and see the reflection that there's a possibility now to live in a different way. And also the hope, because if you're doing it, then that also says, I have an opportunity, you know, there's a possibility for me actually to live in a different way. The other part is that the importance of staying on the journey. And so as an addict, and they come in into the programs, and they look and they see, one of you reflected, and they're like, wow, they've been able to do this for 7 years, for 10 years, for 50, or for now going on 30 plus years. And so the ability to know through the reflection that living a different life that has hope, that has meaning, that has healing, right? That has a new direction, can be sustained for many years. And so that's the reflection that we offer through El Laquech for those coming in to recovery. When we look at Panchebe and we're seeking the truth and the roots, right? This reflection also, besides offering that lifetime commitment, right? Because when we're seeking truth, it's a commitment that goes over our lifespan. So we can't just, I'm gonna, try to seek truth today and then, I'm just gonna get it and then I'm done. No, it's a journey, it's a lifelong journey. Because what I find out today, might be an immature version of something as I continue to look and seek that will develop and mature, right? And so it's it's the same thing. As a child, they love food. Well, what kind of food do they like? Well, the little food that you can't really chew, that's not very hard, right? Baby food is what we call it. So that food that's already blended and you don't have to, it works because you don't have teeth to wrestle with something a little bit harder or whatever, that works. But as they continue to develop, food changes, right? And so now we're able to bite, some food that now might be a little more difficult. And then, interesting enough, as we're coming back into that third phase of life, that some of that stuff might look a little more familiar. Because maybe, as an elder, then I'm going to go back to eating the things that are a little more easier to digest. So the cycle of life in and of itself. So when we look at Panchebe and we have, those coming in, addicts coming in, and people struggling with mental health, and they're coming in to look at how can I get this different life that I have no idea how to get, but I want. It's in the process of seeking the truth of themselves or healing then is available. So what happens, is that we do give assignments and we do have conversations, right, within group or lessons that we share with the clients that come into Latino Commission to help them to seek their own truth, So where are the areas of healing that need to happen and connecting for them, right, on those areas so that as they continue, to escarbar, as they continue to dig and to clear the smoke, that they have a clear vision of what is their truth and where are the areas that they need healing and getting that healing, right? And also that it is a process, right? It is a process. And remember, like we said, to stay relentless in Panchebe, seeking the truth in our life, we have to stay relentless on our journey of recovery to stay in the truth. And that is something that no one is exempt from. Doesn't matter how many years you have, you have to stay in pursuit, relentless, dedicated, determined pursuit of that truth, or else that's when relapse happens, right? So that is the way that we apply Panchebe. And then we have Hunaku. And I think one of the first things that we have to acknowledge, right, and especially when we come in to recovery and our clients come into Latino Commission, is that the problem of addiction is greater than ourselves. I mean, think about it. if a smoker, right? I had a habit of smoking. Said, I know, smoking is probably going to lead me to cancer. It's not good for my lungs. It's going to, harm my health. So I'm going to quit. If that was sufficient, then we wouldn't even be in business, because then you could just quit, right? But because it's greater than us and we can't do it alone, the concept of Hunapku is so important, understanding that it's through the spiritual connection and that reflection of those around us. This is not a journey that goes by yourself. It's an interrelated journey that we have to travel with others, and others that are more along the road than we are, right? I know that someone once said that if you want to, if there's a life that you want to lead, then identify those people that are leading and living that life that you want to live, and then get close to them, because they're successful in that way and you don't have the skills yet of being successful. And so it's not any different in the life of addiction, in the life of recovery. We need to learn how, and learning how means that we have to acknowledge, first of all, that it's greater than ourselves. And so if it's greater than ourselves, then we need to reach out to something greater than ourselves. And also, the reflection of this whole universe needs to be engaged in on our journey of recovery. And so, looking at that, there is no separation of, within us. That's why we say holistic. In our journey of recovery, that means that spiritual element needs to be connected to this physical element, to the emotional element, right? And to the intellectual or mental part. All of that needs to be connected if we're going to be successful within our lives in recovery. Also within that interconnectedness, being connected in that way will also help us then when we go back out to be in relationship with everyone else out there, especially within our families, right? So there's a great responsibility then as we journey on this path of recovery to have our relationships be a reflection of the pursuit that we have. In the whole the reciprocity of being in recovery through the maize-based philosophy is that as a person that's engaged in a life where drugs and alcohol do not have control over my life, I need to be in relationship with the reflection around me, in that in la catch, the reflection around in my whole environment. So that means Mother Earth, the Father Sky, and everything in between. I need to be in relationship with all that in a good way. And so that's part of the foundation that we adhere to in Latino Commission, understanding that it is all interrelated, okay? The other foundation of which we build a Latino Commission is La Cultura Cura. So I want to go through that. La Cultura Cura. Culture heals. And so we look at that through 4 ancestral teachings, right? And so when we say that culture heals, what we're really saying is that we have everything we need within us to heal. Now, saying that doesn't mean that then we don't need anything else. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying everything that we need is in us so that that process of healing can happen. And it's not absent of our environment in which we live. Right? Because I know that there's some philosophies out there, especially within the Western thought, which is, well, it's all about me, and I don't need nobody. It's all about me, and you got to put yourself first. And it's and your independence, and it's all centered on the one person. Our teachings don't come that way. Our teachings come from Entloque Nahuatl, which means we need to be interconnected. That the trip in life that we are taking, this journey, is not a solo journey. It's a journey in conjunction with those around us within this environment. Right? So I just wanted to make that point. So the first teaching is that we are sacred and that we're a blessing. Sacred. I always get that. Is it SA or SC, right? And I remember doing a presentation one and I had put SC, which means scared. And so I know we're sacred, and my thing kept saying scared. We're scared, we're scared. We're sacred, right? And so that's our first ancestral teaching. And so what that teaching speaks about is that every person that comes in to this dimension, to this world, right, that is birthed, is a sacred human being. It does not say that every person that comes into this world with two healthy parents, in a household that makes so much money, that lives in a certain part of the world, is sacred. That's not the teaching. The teaching is every single person born is sacred. And their sacredness is a blessing. So you're a blessing. And the important part of this teaching is that for many of us, right, the coming into this dimension, the being born here on earth, wasn't necessarily a good thing within the elements in the environment that you were born. You have heard, patients and clients say, as well as I have, oh man, my parents told me, I wish you were never born. I hate you. We have heard those things. And so it's important for us to understand, remember, pride and strength comes from knowing who you are, right? And those teachings. And so it's important for us to know where we come from. And so our ancestral teachings are important, because if you can understand that, then when you hear all this other rhetoric, then you go, okay, so that has nothing to do with me, because I am sacred. I am a blessing. And that's the narrative that needs to play in my head, and not this other negative stuff. And so that sacredness and that blessing is interrelated. And about sacredness, there is nothing that you nor I can do to make us sacred. We are sacred. We are the reflection of Ometeo. We are the reflection of God. That imprint, that divine imprint is within us. That image is stamped within us. And so just that alone makes us sacred. And for us as addicts coming in, where that was a word, that was so far from our thinking about being sacred and that we were blessings, because what we're told and what we see reflected is the total opposite of that. You are no good, you're untrustworthy, you're just nothing but problems. That is what we hear. And so understanding that, yes, we might have lived our life in an unsacred way, but nevertheless, we are sacred. And this is the time to return back to that sacredness, right? That you're a blessing. We also know that when we honor children in that way, that inoculation of that wanting, you are wanted. You're a blessing. You're sacred. There's something that gets translated there that in their adult life, somehow gives them a strength that children that don't have that, right, and have to work hard towards that. There's a disparity there. So the importance of that. And so coming in, and so, a lot of times that's why ceremony is so important. Acknowledgement is so important. Graduations are so important because we're making a marker and saying, hey, you know what? That might have been, but this is what is now. And so we are a blessing. We are wanted. We are sacred. The second one is you have a sacred purpose. Sacred purpose. And they're like, what? I don't know. Yes, you have a sacred. Listen, there is no other person like you. No other person. You are unique. There's no one that thinks like you, has all the gifts that you have, that knowledge, interprets, that does the things that you do. There is no other person like you. And so with that, the importance for you to be present. You have a sacred purpose. When you're absent of this discussion, of whatever event, it is not the same. And so when we can understand that we were made in a way that is unique, that we walk in a way that's unique, our presence, there's no one else like us. When we can understand that, then that helps us to want to go forward in a different way. And so our ancestors were really important to acknowledge that. The medicine that you carry, the way that you speak, the way that you might touch somebody. I have a comadre that we say her medicine is hugs because she hugs you. Oh my gosh, you just go to another world. I don't hug that way. That's not my medicine. That's not my gift. And you have, those special gifts that nobody else has. And so the importance of understanding that you have a sacred purpose. And some are very creative and artistic. Some can speak beautiful. Some sing, dance, can grow things. Whatever it is, it's unique to you. And that doesn't mean, like I might be able to grow some plants, somebody else can grow some plants. But let me tell you, even in that action, there's a uniqueness about it. So it's not about doing something that, nobody else has, swept the floor like I swept it. No, a lot of people sweep the floor. And even in the way that you do it will be different than the next person, like our fingerprints, right? The third one is that you have teachings and teachers. So a lot of times we come in, into our, from our lives and we're like, oh, what do we have to give? You are a teacher and you have teachings inside of you. And the important part about that is that we need to hear them. Because when you don't speak them, then what happens is that we don't get to learn from the teachings that you have. And we get those teachings from our families, from our experiences, from our life's journey. And so the importance of sharing those teachings, We spoke a little bit last week about the lessons that we might have learned from our family that weren't good things, right? And so we have the choice: do we carry those forward, or do we let those go? And how you came to the conclusion of that one needs to be left behind, and this one I'm going to take forward. You have teachings, you have experiences that taught you things that will help other people. So we have, we are students and teachers at the same time. And just because you, let's say, well, I'm just new, I was just barely in recovery or whatever, it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean like you don't have anything to give. We all do. We all do. And so understanding that you have those teachings within you. The other part is that you have teachers in your life. And they come in all different ways. Teachers come in all different ways. You might go to class and you have a teacher there. Or you might go home and your child teaches you great lessons. I know Comanche, my dog, many of you knew Comanche, beautiful shepherd Shar-Pei. I was able to, and blessed with having him in my life for 13 years. And then he transitioned on. He taught me so much, but one of the biggest things was that unconditional love, And so learning, the plants have a lot to teach us, as well as our mothers. And sometimes the most profound lessons that we learn are from unpleasant experiences. And so not discounting because it was a negative experience that I had nothing to teach. Sometimes those are the most profound lessons that we learn. And then the last one is that that you are protected, and creating that safe place and security comes when all this comes together, right? And so as I safe and secure. And so we know that whenever a human being feels protected, it brings in security. And that happens when we're in a safe place, right? That protection allows those things to come. Someone that does not feel secure is not going to feel safe, right? They're going to feel the lack of protection. And so the ancestral teachings reminds us the importance of walking in those ways. And sometimes we find ourselves in a lot of experiences where we get wounded because we walked in a way that did not have protection. And so looking at how do I walk in those areas? How do I create safe places so that I can feel secure as I continue on. There's an African proverb, and I if you hung around me, you've heard me say this: walk where you're loved. The importance of walking where you're loved, because that means that where you're walking, where you're associating, the people that you hang with, that they're about your best interest. They care for you. And even at times, they're going to tell you things that are difficult because they love you and want to protect you. Walk where you're loved. And so the teaching of the protection, the protected space is safe and secure, feeling secure, is the fourth of the four ancestral teachings. And that is under La Cultura Cura. And so I just want to give credit where credit's due here also, is that it was Maestro Jerry that coined that phrase, La Cultura Cura, and organized these four things. What do I have missing? The teachings of the teachers. I shared it and didn't write it. So I'm going to put teachings, teachers. he put these 4 concepts together, and that is what we say, la cultura cura, those 4 ancestral teachings. So I've got about 5 minutes left. And so I just want to talk about, so how does it get implemented within the Latino Commission? And so the first one is that we help people come back to their sacred self, right? Understanding that, yes, I might have made a lot of not very healthy decisions and live my life in not a good way. But through these teachings, we understand that we in fact are sacred, and coming back, to healing, then it allows us to live in our sacredness. And we do that through different lessons that we give in Latino Commission, right? So we do assignments, why are you here? Trying to help people to connect, right? We do this through reflection also, right? And so these are some of the ways that we do that, so that as they're looking, then they can really make those adjustments and identify those things that take them, and maybe they've been used to doing, to not live in a sacred way. And this is the opportunity to make those shifts. The other part is the ability that we have. So we have our sacred purpose, right? We remind, our clients and the patients within the program about their uniqueness and the abilities that they have that no one else has, right? They have their own medicine. And so we offer opportunities to reconnect to that, right? And we see that a lot, right? You'll see someone in the program and then they start to draw, right? And they're coming back because they haven't even had the time. They haven't sit still long enough because they've been running so ragged. They haven't had the time to just sit down and start to, be themselves again. And then you see that drawing, those creative juices start to flow, and they start to create these beautiful, beautiful pictures. So looking at that, right? So it's the opportunity then to remind and reflect back that they do have a sacred purpose, and they have uniqueness and unique gifts that only they possess, right? Then we go to the teachings and the teachers, and that we have, again, we give the opportunity, as people coming into recovery and they're coming into the houses, right? We offer those educational groups. We offer groups when we just are dealing with the issue. This is an important time so that teachings can go out, and even for them to respond in a way that's different. And so like calling group, or the groups of self-esteem, right? Coming back and building that part up. Which takes us to the last one, which is that we try to create that safe space within the program so that people can feel secure in order to get out what it is that they need to get out, right? And to talk about those things that are so, close and intimate, that we've been carrying for a long time, and allow it to come out so that we can start to have healing in those areas. So, and also in that part of supportive places, right? This is the time where they reconnect to community. So looking at, where is it that they're going to have that support? So is it through churches? Is it through AA, NA? Is it through circles? Is it through ceremony? The sweat lodge? Is it my grandmother's house? And so looking to reconnect in a good way to create that support system also. So these are the 4 ancestral teachings that we have that helps to support our methodology and our attitude and the way that we look at things and do things. We do it with a combination of the maize-based philosophy and la cultura cura. So with that, I want to thank you. Thank you for joining me today as we're on this adventure of Latino Commission and trying to document the way that we do the things that we do. So have a good rest of the day and bendiciones. Thank you.